Hello, Monetization Nation. I'm Nathan Gwilliam, your host, and we've been doing a series of Wednesday afternoon lunch live streams, and we've been going through and teaching the concept of passion marketing. This is a concept that I have used with my businesses and consulting clients over the years, and it's proven to be very successful. And I'm trying to teach that. And we've gone through and we've taught how to identify your ideal customers. We've taught what passion statements are. They usually begin with I love, I want, I hate, I am. We've talked about some of the different ways to leverage how to find those passion statements through the 5 whys exercise. We've talked about some different ways to then leverage those passion statements once we've found them. And last time we talked about uh, passion uh, passion platforms and how we can create Facebook pages and different email lists and newsletters and things that built around the passions that we find. And the last couple of weeks, I have been gone, and I apologize. I have not done this live stream. My father-in-law was sick with COVID, and very sick, was air evac'd to Tucson Medical Center, and was put on a ventilator. And so, with about 30 minutes notice, my wife and I drove down there and spent some time. We visited him and spent time with my mother-in-law, and tried to help out and support there as we could. And so we've been a little disconnected for the last couple of weeks. So we're restarting now, and happy Thanksgiving to all of you. I missed that last week, being able to wish you that last week, but I hope you had a very enjoyable break and vacation, celebrating the things that you're grateful for with the people that you love. Today, we are going to talk about the next step of passion marketing, and that's about creating passion marketing messages. So basically, once we know these passion statements, once you know the level 10 passions of your target audience, and you know how to put them into passion statements, and you know the channels that you're going to use with them, how do we actually use that in our marketing copy? And there's a lot of different types of marketing copy where we can use our passion marketing messages. We can use them in page headlines. That's one of my absolute favorite places to use those. And we're going to talk about that in a lot more depth here today. You can use your passion marketing messages in ads, in lead magnets, in assessments, and we'll talk about those a little bit, in the content like the blogs you create or the podcasts you create. You can use passion marketing messages in your drip marketing messages, and those are the messages that you send via email after you gather someone's email address, and you're kind of dripping those out to them once a week or a couple times a week, and you're trying to nurture that relationship and be top of mind when they're ready to buy, and establish your credibility so they trust you when they're ready to buy. And passion marketing messages are great in those drip marketing messages. We can use passion marketing messages in brochures, on our sales funnels, in our email marketing, in our influencer marketing, on product pages, throughout social media, and those posts, on our business cards, and really any place that we are writing marketing copy, we should be using these marketing messages. So I want to talk about a couple of the core concepts, and then we'll go into maybe some specific applications. One thing that I like to do is I like to marry a passion to a problem. Okay, so think about a business that has successfully identified the biggest problem that you're wanting to solve, and that business describes the problem really well, and then they use the passion statement as the solution to that problem, or what they are going to provide. So, for example, we talked about Deseret Digital Media and how one of their top passion statements was, "I want a more loving marriage." So instead of just using the messaging, "Do you want a more loving marriage?" You might start off with describing problem, right? You might say, "Do you feel disconnected in your marriage? Do you um, do you feel like your marriage has lost its um, a lot of the spice and the pizzazz of your marriage that it had in the early marriage?" Right? Describe what maybe they feel like they've lost, and that's sometimes a very effective way to go. That and so you find the passion statement, and then you find the problem associated with the passion statement. You lead with the problem, and you discuss what they've lost, and then you lead with a passion statement as the promise that you're providing to the customer. uh, People generally respond very well when you use messaging of what they've lost or would lose without it. And obviously, we need to be honest and credible in that messaging. But that's generally a really good way to position the passion statement. Another really good way that I love to use passion statements is in a question format. So if the question was, I want, or if the passion statement was, "I want a more loving marriage," going back to that Deseret Digital Media example, try putting that in question format. "Do you want a more loving marriage?" Right? They assume that you are going to help them find the solution. That's generally a very compelling way. It leads, almost gives intrigue, and you're not telling them how you're doing it, but you're leading with the passion they want the most. And a question in their mind, if you can get them to say, "Yes, heck yeah, I want that," you've grabbed their attention. Another really good way, and I learned this one from Russell Brunson. Actually, I think I learned this the first time um, from the author of Copywriting Secrets, who works very closely with Russell Brunson. And in Copywriting Secrets, they teach you how to create the most effective title. That's Jim Edwards, who's the author of that. And um, his favorite way to create a title. So if you want to learn just one secret strategy for creating a title, this is it. You take what is the thing that they want the most, put that in the title, and then you say "without," and then you put the thing that they want the least. Okay. So going back to the Deseret Digital Media example, if the thing they want the most is a more loving marriage, that may be what you start off with, right? Get a more loving marriage, and then what is it that the people want least? Maybe they don't want to have to go to counselors and talk about it, right? So maybe you say the title of your page would be um, how to how to have a more loving marriage without having to go to counselors and talk about it, right? So again, to restate, um, this is a secret strategy, a tip that I learned from Russell Brunson and Jim Edwards is take your passion statement, lead with your passion statement because that's what they want the most, and then add the word "without," and then put what they want the least after it, right? And use that to lead in all of your different marketing copy. That tends to be extremely compelling. Um, you can even, if you want to go to the next level, you can even say, "even though," after that statement. So you take what they want the most, without what they want the least, and then you say "even though," and then so it could be some failure that you've had before. Maybe they've been to counseling a whole bunch of times, or even though their marriage is, even though they're separated from their spouse, right? You take this horrible reason why they think they can't do it, and you add it to the title with the word "even though." So then, just to restate that title, and again, the formula is what they want the most, without what they want the least, even though, and then it's like the biggest problem or the biggest obstacle that they faced. So going back to the marriage example, that might be how to have a more loving marriage without having to go to a counselor and talk about it, even though you're currently separated from your wife, right? Um, that's a formula that tends to work really well and convert really well. I'm sure you could find titles that work even better. There's so many different formulas you can use, but that tends to be a really go-to formula. And I like to use it the most. I don't usually use the even though one. That tends to make it a little bit long for me. But I generally like to use the what do they want the most without what do they want the least. That tends to be my go-to title, and how I use passion marketing messages in the titles of the pages. So I'm talking a lot about page titles a lot. And even though the focus of this is great marketing messages, why am I talking about page titles? And I think page titles is one of the most important things for us to get right with our passion marketing messages. And once we get that right, we can use that in a bunch of other places. Um, so I remember reading on Copy Blogger that on average, 8 out of 10 people will read the headline copy, but only 2 out of 10 people will read the rest of the article. So getting, in fact, there a lot of the good copywriters, they use a 50-50 rule, and they say you should spend 50% of your time writing the article and the other 50% writing the headline. It's really that important. It's what's going to attract and pull the people into the article. It's going to hook them and get them to read more. And if we don't do a great job of the headline, they'll never make it to the rest of the article. They're probably not going to make it to the rest of the article anyway, but at least grab them and educate them and pull them in with the title. Let's talk about ads a little bit. So over the years, I've designed thousands or worked with designers to design thousands and thousands of different ads, and putting the passion marketing messaging in the ads is incredibly important. And so we've done lots of testing to find what ads. So this is our formula. We'll put out there like 10 different variations of ads. Then we will run them and get a big enough statistical sample. We'll find which ones do the best. We'll turn off the 8 ads that did the worst of the 10, and we'll keep the 2 that do the best. And then we'll try to create variations of the 2 that do the best. If you do that every month for a year, and you're constantly creating more variations, turning off the ones that do the worst, creating new variations of the ones that do the best, and just constantly iterating and testing like that, I've seen people that have radically increased, maybe even as much as 200 or 300% the click-through rates from their ads by just following that simple methodology. But the formula that we've developed for what is included in an ad is pretty simple. I think that every ad needs to have 3 elements to be successful. If you're missing any one of these elements, I guarantee you will not be successful with your ad. And when we run the A/B tests, we just are testing these 3 elements and creating different variations of these 3 elements. So this is what needs to be in every effective ad. And an ad is a passion marketing message, or should be a passion marketing message. First, every ad needs to have an attention grabber. Often those attention grabbers are images. Sometimes they're animated images, sometimes they're video, but you need something that's grabbing their attention. Number 2, every successful ad I've seen has what I call a concise, compelling argument. So in just a few words, you've got to tell them what's in it for them. What's the benefit? In other words, what's the passion statement, right? If you can convey the highest level of passion in your concise, compelling argument, that's generally a formula for a very good ad. So you generally cannot use very many words in effective ads. I've seen that the more words that get included, the less effective the ad becomes. So going back to that example that I've been giving throughout this live stream of, do you want a more loving marriage? How can you say that in as few words as you possibly can, right? So maybe you just say, want a more loving marriage. So that's 5 words, and put a question mark after it, right? That's a concise, compelling argument. And you might have an attention grabber, right? You might have a spouse hugging their other spouse, or you might have 2 spouses holding hands, something that shows the connection that they're really wanting the most, the ideal state where they're wanting to be. Show that as an image on the ad. That's your attention grabber. Or at least that's what one I would test. And then do your concise, compelling argument. And I would come up with a few variations of that. Test the wording. Sometimes one word slightly different in that statement makes a big difference. And then I would have a call to action at the end. Call to actions can often be buttons. Generally, and there's lots of other things. They can be drop downs, they can be choices, they can be radio boxes. There's lots of different ways. They can be just text that's underlined. Try lots of different call to actions and just see what works. I've generally found that using a word like submit or go or something like that is not a good idea. Those are too generic and not the best options for call to actions. Generally, the best words to put on a call to action is what they want. So going back to this example from Deseret Digital Media, if I was doing ads for them, the buttons might say, improve my marriage on the button, right? Figure out what it is they want the most and put that on what you're trying to get them to click on. Okay, so let's talk about some questions that you should ask yourself in the headline. So Clayton Makepeace, in a recent issue of Early to Rise eZine, gave us 6 questions that we should ask ourselves before we write the headline. So here are his 6 questions. Number 1, does your headline offer the reader a reward for reading? So in other words, what are they going to get out of it? What is the benefit for them? The way I like to say that is, what's in it for me? We should be knowing who our ideal customer is and asking ourselves, from the customer's perspective, what's in it for me? And if we can't tell, if our headline isn't telling them that, then our headline failed. Generally, I've seen some exceptions to that, but that is generally a really good rule. Number 2, Clayton says, what specifics could you add to make your headline more intriguing and believable? Okay, so this is the rule of specificity. When we get specific, generally we become more credible. So for example, if we're going to talk about having a more loving marriage, we might talk about specifically how they could have a more loving marriage, right? What are the specific things that would indicate that their marriage is more loving? Is it more communication at time? Is it more intimacy, right? And including those kinds of things, the specific things. Is it doing it in 30 days? Is it doing it in only 10 minutes a day of time, right? Give them those kinds of specifics, and that generally makes you more credible. Number 3, tip for a title is, does your headline trigger a strong, actionable emotion the reader already has about the subject at hand? Okay. The best ads evoke emotion. When we did adoption ads, right? And it was an ad targeting a family wanting to adopt, you might show a beautiful baby, or a family, a mother holding a beautiful baby, right? And that it helps evoke that emotion within them that they're wanting to add the child to their family. So does your passion marketing message evoke an emotion? Number 4, does your headline present a proposition that will instantly get your prospect nodding his or her head? So that goes back to where I encourage you to put it in a question format. If you put your passion marketing message in a question format, and you can get them out loud or even internally responding yes, or shaking their head, or saying definitely, right? That's them. That's them selling. You've sold them, and you've helped convert them on your passion promise or proposal. Number 5, could your headline benefit from the inclusion of a proposed transaction? Okay, so sometimes this works and sometimes this doesn't, but sometimes if you tell them what you're wanting to do with them, if you're a coach and you're going to coach them through that marriage, sometimes it's better to put that in the title so they know exactly what they're wanting to get out of it. And the reason that's important is because some of the people seeing that ad or that headline would want a coach and some of them wouldn't. And so by including the information about the transaction or the service you would provide, it helps weed out the people that don't want what you do, and it helps magnetically attract the people who do want what you're doing. So tell them a little bit more about the transaction or the service or what you're doing. And then the last suggestion that he proposes is including an element of intrigue to drive the prospect into your opening copy. So in other words, don't tell them everything. Um, create suspense, create something where they want to keep reading so they can find out the rest. All right. So we've talked about in our previous episodes, finding your passion tribe, finding the passion statements, how to find those passion statements and why those are so important, connecting with our target audience through the passion statements, creating passion channels that help us aggregate those audience. Today we've talked about, and we also talked about telling a good story, having good design. And today we've talked about leveraging those passion marketing messages and using them in our headlines, using them in our ads. We can also use them in our lead magnets. So when we know the passion statements, go create an entire lead magnet around those passion statements. If we know their top passion statement is I want a more loving marriage, go create an ebook or go create a free course or something you can give them and provide value to them around how to have a more loving marriage, right? Another way to do that is through an assessment. An assessment is where you ask them a series of questions, and then based on how they answer those questions, you give them an assessment of telling them what they can do to improve in their desired outcome. So, for example, with the passion statement, I want a more loving marriage, you might have the more loving marriage assessment, and you have them answer 20 questions about their marriage, and then you automatically create an assessment based on their responses. If they say that they're not talking with each other, as much, then you give them an assessment that talks about how that's so important to talk to each other, give them some statistics about talking to each other, and maybe gives them tips about how they can schedule time and improve the amount of time they talk to their spouse, right? That's a custom assessment. You can build that around the passion. The content that you create, the articles, the podcast, build that around the passion statements. The drip marketing messaging, create a series of marketing messages that teach them how to have a more loving marriage. Give them 6 or 8 automatic messages that go out to them twice a week, and build the relationship, give them value so they know, like, and trust you. Your brochures, your funnels should start with that and should have video related to that passion statement and that passion marketing message. And the whole funnel should show them how you're going to deliver on the promise of that passion marketing message. The business cards can even have that on that. The social channels can be named, like we talked about in our last live stream, with the passion marketing message, and then the post can be focused around that, or you can put the tagline with that passion marketing message in your header image for your social channels. So anyways, that's a whole bunch of ideas. Really, the bottom line is take those passion statements that are driving the life of your ideal customers and leverage that in all of your passion copy, all of the marketing messaging that you're creating. So that's all that I've got for you today. I wish you success in creating and leveraging your passion marketing messages. And if you enjoyed this episode, you can go to passionmarketing.com and you can download my free ebook on passion marketing. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I wish you success in your venture.